Howdy. All right. Man, this is going to be fun. I have really enjoyed over the years being associated with not only Texas A&M, but students and people like yourself that I can visit with, talk to, and gain some insight about how you feel, what you think, and stay up with everybody. You know, here I am, class of 57. You don't need to do the numbers there, how old I am, but the real interesting thing is I like to keep up. I want to keep up with everything that's going on, and you keep it up in an intellectual environment like we have here at Texas A&M. And to me, that is fun. And I really feel like I'm one of the luckiest guys around because I had a good career in a whole lot of different things. And but the best decision I ever made was to come back to Texas A&M and College Station. I want to share some of those stories with you as I go through a little bit of my life cycle, and I will share some of the Junction stories with you, but not all of them. Some of them I don't like to talk about, but I will say to you at the start of this, there's a junction in everybody's life, and if you learn to accept the challenges, I call them the junction side because that's what they really are. And everybody has a junction on an ongoing basis. I'm going to share with you not just the junction that I knew as a football player, but some of the junction experiences that I had in the real world in terms of surviving. And I think the challenge that you guys have and your generation is how are we going to survive what we're faced with today? And it's pretty awesome. So I'm going to try to compare a little bit and talk a little bit what I think about leadership and what the goals are and what you should do. And I have a pretty basic thing that I want to outline first. First, I call it, and in fact, I've taught this class back for about 4 years back when Emory Ballard first came here as a football player. I mean, as a football coach. We went through a real horrendous defeat in the football program. It was one of my old roommates, Gene Stallings, and so there were some things that I felt like I could bring to the table that would help cure some of the problems that we went through. And so when Emory Ballard came here, I was president of the Bank of A&M then. And I said, Coach, I'd like to request a favor of you if I can. And I have a class set up. The Dean of Education was on my board at the bank. So I asked him to let me put together a class that I could just talk to them about what I felt was their biggest need. And I really called it goals and objectives, attitude, and decision making, and how all those three work together in terms of their lives and so forth. So, you know, one of the things that I had a big concern about was, as a freshman, when I came to A&M, there were 65 guys that came to the freshman for football team. There were only 6 that survived all of that. And I just felt like there was a better way for us to do basic understanding for those guys as opposed to just, you know, running them off just because you had a chance to run them off. In fact, the commandant of the university said, when I never will forget, sitting in the first auditorium as a class, and Colonel Davis said, all right, look to your right and look to your left because those guys are not going to be here. And it was true. I mean, we had over 2,500 freshmen and only 1,200 graduated. So that was a real washout. And the thing that really bothered me was that nobody really cared about why. I did, and that's why I put together this class on goals and objectives. And and the attitude that you have through all this, and certainly the decision making. How many of you really have a plan, program on what your goals and efforts are? Probably you've done one of them already. You made a decision in high school to go to A&M, and you're here, you're graduate students. What have you planned in terms of your goals and objectives for the next 5 years? How many raise your hand and just tell me if you've really done that? Okay. Now, so my first goal and objective when I came to A&M was, number one, just get an education. That was really primary for me. Football was just secondary, okay? I just wanted a scholarship so I could get an education because that was so primary to me. But I really didn't know what I wanted to major in. I went through some real interesting decision-making deals to decide what I wanted to do. And that's part of the decision-making process that you've got to go through. But also the attitude of how you do it. Now, there's a little bit of a story on how I changed my major. I was majoring in engineering technology because I thought, well, that's where the world is making money and business and stuff like that. So my first challenge to that was not really knowing enough about it, and so I had a problem in several other areas that I had to decide whether I was going to even make it at A&M. And of course, one was football, and I'll have to share this story with you like this. I wasn't a sought-after football player. I was small. I only weighed 180 pounds. I came down here begging for a scholarship, and the truth of the matter is, couldn't get one. Finally, I got one by just saying, hey, just give me a trial scholarship. Well, that's what I got. So then, my freshman year, I played 2 minutes. And so the end of the season is coming along, and the 2 minutes was the first game. So I knew I would go play, So I'm sitting on the bench. We're playing University of Texas in Memorial Stadium over there. And I said, golly bum, I don't care what the coach says. I'm going to at least tell my grandkids I played. So 5 minutes when the game's over, I run out there and tell the guy, hey, I'm substituting for you. And I play the 5 minutes, and the game's over, and coach eats me out like I have never. And so I'm thinking, well, so what? At least I got one more semester left. That said, then we have a coaching change, and Coach Bryant comes. And I said, oh, gosh, here comes another mean-ass coach that, I'm going to have a hard time. And sure enough, I run down there the first day of spring training, and I'm looking on the team I get down to the last team, and finally I find my name. And I was disappointed. I said, man, this is really going to be grim. Well, we go through spring training, and, and they clip off a team about every 2 or 3 days, and I always ooch up one team. Long story short, season's over, spring training's over, and I go into Coach Bryant and I said, I'd like to talk to you about my scholarship. I don't have one, but I'd like to be able to stay and continue playing and being a football player. And he looked at me and said, sorry to disappoint you, but you're not a football player. And I just was stunned. And I sat there for a minute, and I know that he cussed a lot. So I said, blankety blank, let's make a deal. And I jump across the table from him and look at him like this. I was mad. And he says, what do you mean make a deal? I said, here's what I want you to do. Let me come out this fall. If I make the team, you give me a scholarship. If not, you can kick my butt off. He says, okay, you got a deal. Now, I'm walking out thinking, oh, man, I'm okay. And I said, well, I'd like to get one of those jobs, and he said, we got one left. That's in the steel mills. Okay. So go down there, and there are 2 basketball players and 1 track guy and me. And I'm working in the steel mills. That's where industry is, okay? And they come in one day, about after we've been in there a week, and said, we got a problem in the blast furnace. Got a wildcat strike. What's a wildcat? I didn't know what a wildcat strike was. And sure enough, they told us, and the guys would come to work, and then they would leave, say they were sick. And you have to take their job. Now, I'm telling you, anybody been to blast furnace? Anybody know what one's like? It's where they melt down the scrap iron and pig iron and everything, make it into ore. They call it pig iron. Hot, 120 degrees. You wore an asbestos suit just to keep the heat off of you. Then what really scared everybody was when I got up in the rack moving melting steel around, the guys were just scattered everywhere. Why they ever let safety even let me get up there was a long story short, and they hated us. And I mean, they wouldn't speak to you. They cut up our clothes in the locker, and it was nasty. Well, I went to the superintendent. I said, I think I'm going to have a fight with one of these guys. I'm sleeping with my pistol in my bed now. And he says, no, really, it was on the ship channel. I mean, it was. So anyway, make long story short again, he said, look, if any one of them messes with you inside the plant, we can fire them. I said, what about outside the plant? We don't have a choice there. I said, okay. Now, one more time. I said, okay. They had a little room where you bring your brown bag, okay? And they never would let me in there. I was a scab. So this time, I walk in there and open the door and slam it. And I said, I'm having lunch with you guys today. He said, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. Who's the first SOB who's going to throw me out? And they, all of a sudden, they knew that if they hit me, I could get them. So I won that war, okay? So that was my first. So after that, the truth of the matter is, I made friends with all those guys. Now, that said, I didn't think I wanted to major in industrial engineering anymore. So we come back and we have Junction. And I said, all right, it's nice and cool out there. The truth of the matter, I was so concerned about my grades coming into A&M that I went to Junction. They had a summer school out there. So I went to summer school and to get some grade points and make sure that I didn't flunk out the first semester. That said, I said, it's nice out there. It's cool at night. We got all the lawns irrigated and everything. I said, guys, it's going to be fun. Well, what happened was, we get out there, summer school's been out 3 weeks. Irrigation was off. It was just dry, cockleburs everywhere, raspberry. And that's what we worked out in. And I said, this isn't going to be any fun. But long story short, again, okay, here was an attitude that I had to have. I wanted my scholarship. That was my decision. I had to find a way to keep it. And and so I kept, in my mind, I said, okay, if they run this guy off, not me, then I can stay, Long story short, we took 96 guys out there and came back with 36. I was the one that happened to stay because I had a few fights. I did, in those days, Coach Bryant let you challenge somebody that was in front of you. I challenged all of them. I mean, I had a fight nearly every day. And they had me in the, I had busted some skin or something, and they were working on me. And the trainer said, Coach wants you to leave. He doesn't think you're a football player. I looked at him and I said, tell the SOB I'll be here when they're all gone. And I was mad again, So in his book, Coach Bryant writes up that story and says, I think we found a keeper. Okay. But the point is, again, my goal was to get out there, get my scholarship, and stay. And so that's life. Everybody's going to have those kind of junctions in their life, and I just think that that's the critical part that all of you will have. And, you know, the first challenge that you'll have is, you know, what kind of job do you want? Right? Have you figured out what kind of job you want? Or is there a kind of job out there that you want and can get? You know, so my point here again is you're going to go through a lot of challenges on just trying to find a job that you want or even get a job. Right now, our economy isn't in good shape at all. So that's going to be a real challenge for you. So you're going to have to find a way to make some choices that you may or may not want to make. Now, that said, if you're lucky, you'll get one. If you're not, you'll have to find some way to change your mind. But again, it's the attitude that you have. What am I going to do to overcome this? What do I have to do to sell somebody on getting a job? And first of all, is it a job that you can be happy with? I would suggest to you that one of the things you really try to do is find a job that you can be happy with. Money's not the object sometimes. Money is not the object. If you're unhappy with your job and your boss is kicking your butt and you don't like who you're working with and so forth. But find something that you can be happy with. I've been the luckiest guy in the world to be able to do that. To me, it's been a train ride of tough decisions. But, you know, I made them, and I've been lucky. And I will say to you that what happened to me was, and again, I'll go back to the football, and we come back, and I'm still struggling. By then, I'm not worried about being on the team or starting. I mean, I just said glad I could sit on the bench. But over a period of a few months, I was playing more. And I was playing a little bit more. And so one of the guys who had a sunstroke out of Junction was having to come out early, and he was a tackle. And Coach Bryant said, if he comes out, you're going to have to play tackle. And I said, well, I don't play tackle. I play guard. I play tackle. Okay. In this particular game, we're playing. This team had an all-American tackle, the meanest guy in the conference. Made it all-conference, all-American, played for the Green Bay Packers 15 years, okay? That's how tough he was. And I said, oh, if I ever get in there, I'm meat. And in those days, you know, if you came out in any given quarter, you couldn't go back in until the next quarter. So third quarter rolls up. Sure enough, Schrader's out, and I go in. But I made up my mind about one thing. I had made a decision. I said, I'm not going to let this big guy get me first. So my plan was, in those days, we had a good, you know, we could use our elbows like fists. And we did that pretty effectively. And so I charged off sides, hit him right in the jaw, knocked him back, and stunned him enough where they had to put some stuff in his nose and carry him off the field. I said, boy, I got it made this quarter. Fourth quarter, he just about beat me up, but I mean, I survived it, okay? But as we were walking off the field, Coach Bryant comes up and puts his arm around me. He said, kind of looks at me, he said, Dennis, did you charge off on purpose? And I looked at him, I said, Coach, I had to cheat. You don't think I could whip him fair, do you? He said, that a boy. I started every game from that point on the rest of the time as at Texas A&M, because I finally got to where he respected me, and that was the problem that we had. A lot of the guys, we had some great guys but Coach Bryant had a way of intimidating you to the point where you just would give up. And, you know, there were several of us that decided that's not what we're going to do. Now, we go on, and our junior year, I play 54 minutes every game. Never came out, never got hurt, and I came out only to get a drink or something like that, because you could rest a minute or two in the last quarter, or the inning quarter. So we lose the conference championship by half a game. But the next year, we go on, we're undefeated, and we absolutely have a chance to make a name for ourselves. Even though we were put on probation, everybody thought that guys like me was paid little money. Well, yeah, hello, had to beg for a scholarship. But anyway, we were all put on probation. We didn't get to go to any bowl games. But we ended up number 5 in the nation. And that's where we are today. So that's the first time anybody's had a chance to get to a point where we were that long ago. Now, what I'm saying to you out of all this in my life is that the things that happened to me, and I've always had a saying: success breeds success, and if there's a negative in your life, find a positive. And that's what I've been able to do. And I've done that in my life, and I will share some stories with you as it relates to that. So I want you, if we don't do anything else today, just remember those two things. Success will breed success. And if there's a negative thing that happens in your life, there's also a positive. And Sally and Herb have been through a lot of those negatives with me over the years, and we've talked about a lot of them. But there's always, in everything I've gotten into, I found a positive side to it. And I've been very blessed to be able to do that. But, you know, those are the things that you're going to go through in life and just trying to get a job and get a career. But I want to talk about 2 or really 3 more things that I think is exceedingly critical, or you should think about, okay? So you're finishing up. You're going to start your life, even if you have a job. But what's the first thing you probably will be doing? You're going to find a mate. And I think finding a mate today is very, very difficult to do in terms of all of the above. Because our economy today is the female works, the male works. And there's maybe not the kind of continuity in a marriage that you really should have, and it conflicts, so you have to find a way to work it, making it work. Both sides, female and male. And I promise you, if you make a real effort to do that, and when you say I do, make sure it's I do, okay? And I will say to you that so much of life today is conflicted with that kind of separation, and it's unfortunate. But I have to say that because, you know, I have 3 daughters. I worry about them all the time. We all have people that have been through that situation. So I think that's probably one of the bigger decisions that you'll ever make. Now, what can help heal those kind of problems? I will say to you that the one thing that we all need to do, and I have to do it more than I do, and that is to understand my religion, how it helps me, and the times that I have gone to bed on my knees, thinking, Lord, just help me through one more problem. And you know what? I will promise you that a lot of my problems were really answered because of prayer. I really believe that. So I think that if you keep that in your thought process, why, it'll work. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because it's, everybody understands that, but you just have to, in this day and time with the system as it is, man and wife working and everybody doing their pursuit for happiness, that sometimes is a real challenging problem. So just think about that. Now, here's what I want you to think about next. As you seek to find a job, hopefully in your lifetime as a student and in high school and in college, you've done some internship. People look at internships with, well, I don't know what a good word is, but except it is a need. Because nobody wants to hire somebody who's never done any work in their life. They want to hire people who have had interns, who've had a good work ethic, who know how to work. And here's some tips. If you find a job that you think you like, and you're going through the interview and you're not really sure, what goes through your mind? Oh, you get all nervous and everything, and I can make a suggestion that works. Just say, okay, boss, I tell you what, let's make a deal. I'll work here for you 30 days, no pay. And let's see whether you like me and I like you and whether we can get a deal put together. And I'm willing to do that because that's how bad I want this job. So that's just one of the little suggestions that I've had. And once you get that job, here's what you got to do. You outwork your competitor. You work harder than anybody else in the office. You go early, stay late. Find a ways to get whatever you have to do accomplished and be ahead of the hounds. Why did I say that? Well, I've been down that road. Because when I graduated, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had several options. I could have coached football with Coach Bryant, but I didn't want to coach. I really didn't know. I had a contract to go in the Air Force and fly as a pilot, and I really thought that's what I wanted to do in life, make a career flying. Because as a little kid growing up, I absolutely wanted to fly. I wanted to fly in the worst way. And my freshman year at A&M, this spring, I find me an instructor, and I hire him out to teach me how to fly. So that was a good decision, because once I got to pilot training, I was always the first one to graduate solo first and finish all my flying first. Then the instructors would get me to fly with them to help instruct other students. The point is, flying was great and I liked it, and they put me in B-47s, and our mission was to carry nuclear bombs around, penetrate the borders of the enemy, and then come back out. And I just didn't have this passion to want to fly and drop bombs and kill people. So I had to make a decision. So I had a chance to take an early out, and I had to stay in the reserves for a number of years, and I flew, and I made a little money flying, and I spent a number of months just flying, because I didn't really have a job yet, and what I was really looking for was to get that job with an airline. And one of the things that I did when I was in pilot training, I always had plan B. I don't know, for some reason I always had, A doesn't work, you ought to have B. And so I went through pilot training with the first class of Air Force Academy guys. Great bunch of guys, real pros. And And fortunately, I got to be the squadron commander. Of course, I was an Aggie. No West Pointers. We had a lot of West Pointers in class, but anyway, I said, you know, again, I was the first one to do all my and I was flying with the instructors, and I said in class one day, I said, guys, how many of y'all are going to make a career out of the Air Force? Well, not many. A few raised their hand, and I said, okay, let's do this. I don't know whether I'm going to make a career out of it because I have some reservations. So what I'd like to propose is that I call the FAA and get them to give us an exam, and we can all get our commercial license now. We don't have to worry about it if we have to get out, and then we have to go through some training. So everybody said, oh, okay. So that was a decision I made, and I said, okay, I want to use that to fly commercially. Now, so I'm waiting for the commercial job, and I finally get an offer. Delta Airlines, $15,000 a year, which was a heck of a salary. And in fact, Coach Bryant was making $15,000 a year when he left only 4 years earlier. So the point is, I said, okay, I got a job. But I come up here and I meet with Dick Hervey, who was association director for the former students, and my old business law professor, and we're just chatting, and they said, well, Dennis, what are you doing? So I'm waiting to get in fly commercially. And now, in the School of Business, one of the things that I always did was find a way to get a friend in my professorship. That's how I got the job with Procter & Gamble. And Phil Good was one of my law professors. And anyway, they said, why don't you, we're starting the savings loan. College Station is going to grow. We got the rudder plan going. And we started the savings and loan. And we'd like for somebody like you to start up with us. I said, okay. Now, you have to interview the guy who runs it, which I did. And he was a tough old guy. And that's the deal I made with him. I said, okay, Mr. Burgess, I'll work here 30 days to make sure you like me. Because right now I'm just flying in reserves anyway. He said, okay, you got a deal. So at the end of 30 days, he offers me the job. Now, I had made up my mind that even at $5,000 a year, which is what the salary was, that I wanted to be where the action is. I wasn't sure I wanted to just be flying around, you know, being a taxi cab driver in the air. I was afraid I'd get bored. So, took the job and flew in reserves to make side money, and we started the savings loan. But guess what I did? I went to work early, went to work late, and in those days, the financial institutions weren't all that aggressive, but I knew that one thing we had to do is get more deposits so we could make home loans for the university because it was growing. And I'll get you some of the numbers here in a minute, which are just pretty awesome, because I said, man, if I can be a part of that activity, that's what I want to do. Now, so I would take guys to lunch. I'd see people at the end of a day. I would do everything that I could to get savings accounts. I talked to builders. I talked to them about, well, use us. And guess what? The little old savings loan just went, we grew. And I ended up being the executive vice president and running savings and loan. Now, why did I want to come? I knew that rudder was there. I knew A&M was changing. I knew that A&M was going to become something other than the old military establishment it was when I graduated. There were only 7,000 kids there then, and it had to change. Sure enough, what was the big change? Females. Hello? They finally figured that out. Golly. Now, here was the student population. I went back and pulled these numbers up out of the College Station information. 1960, there was only 7,000 students here. 1970, it jumped to 14,000. Okay, 1980, 33,000. 1986, 36,000. Then it goes on down, and then it goes to 88, it goes to 40, 90, it goes to 41. Year 2000, it's 44,000. 2011, it was 49,000. And what is it today? 53,000. And so to me, having made that decision to come here and be involved with all the growth, all the excitement, all the football, all the athletics, and I ended up being involved in just about everything, and it was fun. And that's what I'm going to suggest to you. Get your snoot into everything that you can when you go to work. Be involved with your church, be involved with the chamber, be involved with deals with the city, whatever you can get into. I know that we were really aggressive in the Junior Chamber of Commerce, and we made a name for ourselves. And we did a lot of things that the old guard couldn't believe. So out of all that, one of the things that I get involved in is some of the politics. And we went around making all the precincts. We won them all. Well, I never in my dreams ever realized that I'd get into politics. I never did really get into it, but guess what happened? Phil Graham decides to run for the congressman. Well, he was just a professor out here in the economics department. And, not too many people thought that an economics professor would be a good congressman. So he couldn't find anybody to be his treasurer. He asked me, and I volunteered. Now, that was a real stepping stone in terms of my life, again, in terms of what I could do. Now, the next thing that happened was this community was growing. We really we had one little old bank in College Station. We had 3 family-owned banks in Bryant. And here I have the ability to do what? Start up with a little brand new bank. So they hired me because I was outgoing, I was involved in everything, people knew me, and that's what I'm saying to you. You got to get involved in your communities, be interfaced with everybody. You never know when an opportunity will present itself. Like the JCs, then ended up being the chair for Phil Graham. There are a lot of things. And Herb and I and Sally, we've been involved in a lot of political situations since then. And so we will need, and I'm saying this with all sincerity, we're going to need leadership from people like you in the coming days. And you need to be involved everywhere so when you see an opportunity that presents itself, you can grab a hold of it. But the leadership in this country, I don't know what y'all really think about it, but I don't think it's very good. And we've got to find ways to retune it, not that they're doing all bad, but find ways to tune it up a little bit so where we can take the regulations off. I'm working with a company right now, 14 months, just trying to get a permit to burn trash out of a bakery. Southwest Bakery bakes 1 million hamburger buns a day. So they have some problems with that. generally speaking, 10% of their product is trashed. Okay? So they take that package of buns and throw it into a bin. This company will come along. Before, it all went to the garbage can. Now this company comes along, cleans out the paper, burns it out, formulates and grinds up the old biscuit. Guess what it goes into? Chicken feed. So 10% of every bag of chicken feed now is this product. And they buy potato chips, bread, hamburger, and all these things that environmentally went to the dump. Okay? But here's the problem. We've got a furnace here that all we need to do is say, hey, it burns the paper. No, well, you got the bureaucrats over here. 14 months I've been waiting on it to build a $10 million plant that hires 25 people. We got this crap going through our whole system. Guess what we didn't have for a long time? Oil and gas, right? Why? Well, the regulations were, I mean, we couldn't do a lot of things. My degree is geology, so I know a little bit about it. Now we've found a way to frack the rock, and it's really pretty scientific. We now have the capability of generating all the oil and gas we need and get off of the eastern, handbag that they have us in. So my point again, be involved with people and someday you never know when you can be a part of a decision that has some importance. I promise you. If you work at it, you'll find it. I never thought I'd find anything like that, but it did. And not because, and I would say a lot of it was luck, but the other part of it was that I was tenacious enough, hard-headed enough, to always try to stick my snoot in a whole lot of things. It got me in trouble some, as Sally Herb will tell you, but it's something that we all have to address. And and I taught this class, as I told you earlier, because one of the things that I had a problem with is the football players getting an education. Because out of the 36 guys that came back from Junction, I will say we learned something, because all 36 of us graduated. And let me give you that list. 9 were engineers, 6 petroleum, 2 civil. One of the petroleum engineers, his company now is the chief decision maker for Princeton Minerals, and he took Princeton Minerals from 5 million 27 years ago to 8 billion today, Joe. And that's how successful he's been. And he's also, why did I bring that up? Because one of the things that I got involved in here was putting together the Traditions Golf Course and HSC. And the guys with the golf course really went broke. So I got Billy Pete Huddleston to come in and help us piece that thing back together. He also has over 100 scholarships that he's given. And he taught 1 day a week in the petroleum engineering department. Brilliant guy. Now, I want to tell you a little bit more about HSC. If time, I still got a lot of time on it.
You have about 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Well, we had 11 educators, 3 Division I coaches. One coach coaches Alabama into the national championship, and that's Gene Stallings, who was a failure here. But he goes to Alabama and wins the national championship in 1994. 1 dean, 1 PhD, superintendent of schools, 2 farmers and ranchers, 4 architects, 2 attorneys, 1 bank president, and a veterinarian, And all these guys were successful. But we learned something out there at Junction. We learned not to give up. We learned a lot of things about ourselves, as I did. And if I can do anything else, I want to pass that on to you. Because I promise you, there'll be a junction in your life, not just once, maybe 40 times. Who knows? But you've got to understand that when you're down and out and it's negative, you just got to find a way to get up and make it work. And it's there's nothing magic about it. I think that all the things that I've gotten into, and some of the things I've gotten into is because I pushed, and it never. And I thought, well, golly bum, it didn't work out the way it should have. But I said, okay, maybe there's an answer down the road. So I'm going to give you one. It involves the university. One of the things that I did, I sold my bank at the right time, thank you, Lord. But my benefactor, and the other thing I want you to do, is have a benefactor in your life, somebody that you can go to, you can console with, you can break bread with, and that's what I did. And that one guy that was a benefactor for me was Bum Bryant. You know who Bum Bryant is? He was an all guy, made a lot of money. There's a Bryant building on the end of the stadium named after him. And I tried to get him to buy some stock. And because when I put the bank together, this is a capital poor community. Not a lot of people have big money. So I always had to go around finding people to put some money. And Bum said, no, he says, I'll put a CD with you, which he did, but he didn't buy any stock. The other guy I go to, and this is a fun story for me. I called Coach Bryant. I said, Coach, I really need for you to buy some stock. And I had kind of made up my mind because a lot of professors, as they were coming in, I'd sell them 200 shares. That was kind of my MO. So I called him up. I said, Coach, got a deal for you. Oh, okay, what do you want? I said, I've got my bank going, and I need for you to buy some stock. And he pauses a minute. He said, well, how many shares you want me to buy? And I said, hey, Coach, if you buy 200, I'll be happy. And he was, he had that kind of, and I said, golly, bum, I should have said 100. And he finally said, hell, Dennis, what's wrong with you? And I said, oh, man, you're not going to buy anything. He says, give me 1,000 shares. I got more confidence in you than that. I said, okay, Coach, say. But the point is, he was one of my mentors over the years, and I stayed friends with him, and we did a lot of things together. And the last story. Now, when he dies, in 1982, 6 months later, we get a call from the legal boys, and they said, Coach Bryant has left all the former students who played for him, their heirs, $100,000 scholarship endowment. That was about how much the stock was when he sold it. And he put it away and says, for the Junction Boys. So you never know when you can put together an opportunity here that finally pays dividends down the road. So if you get out and make all the friends you can, but get you a mentor. Find somebody that you like to break bread with and develop that attitude. So now real quick, because and I love this story now. I'm a little bit of a maverick, and I left the bank mainly because I knew that things weren't going to work out for me, okay? So what happens? The city of College Station says, why don't you just run all the economic development? Because here's what I did when I was at the bank. I said, and I was on the P&Z, capital improvements, I was on all those committees. And what I've kept seeing is the city's making dumb decisions here. If we develop this tract of land here, we know we're going to grow south, why not take, if the city requires a 12-inch water main just for that subdivision, make it 24 or 36. Do the same thing with sewer. We want to put all the utilities underground. So we have a master community that outshines everybody. And that's what we did. And we put parklands together and coordinated with the school districts. Now, one of the things that we did that I wanted to do as the EDC guy, I wanted to keep that program going, but I wanted a business park. I wanted a new country club, golf course, so we could cater to all the professors that were coming in. Okay, we did. And that program gets into Texas Monthly. Bryant calls me and he says, Dennis, he says, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing the same thing you told me to do 2 years ago. He said, you remember when you asked me if you were on the board for Texas A&M, what would you do, what passion do you have that you'd really want to get into the system? And I said, a research park. Remember that? He said, yeah, I remember that. And I said, that's what we're doing. Because the university's not doing it, and you're even chairman of the board. He said, I know. So, yeah, I don't think anything about it. He calls me 2 weeks later, and he says, okay, Dennis, you make a presentation to the Board of Regents as to why you want a business park, research park. I said, hey, I'd be glad to, which I did. It was the best meeting I ever had, because 3 months later, they called me and says, Bum calls me, he says, I got good news, I got bad news. I said, hell, give me the good news first. He says, we like the concept of a business park. We're going to do it. But we want it on campus. I said, okay. So we got that going. So the first thing we had going was food safety inspection school. The vet school bid it, and they got it. University said, yeah, we have the money, boys. You know, a month goes by, no deal, no money. And 2 months go by, and they walk in one day and says, sorry, guys, we don't have the money. We said, you're crazy. How do you got all kind of money? And y'all, I said, you know. So that was my first run into some real, you know, stinky bureaucracy. So I said, okay, we'll do it. Okay. So I go back with my association. I go back to my bank, borrow $3.5 million for the interim construction money and for the permanent. We walk in and say, okay, we got it. Well, I won't tell you a little bit about the rest of that story, but I got it, but I figured out what we had to do. Now, so I was always ticked off about that. Now, the years go by. I mean, it's paid for now, and the university has an asset on their books. It didn't cost them anything. I actually put the money together for them and gave it to them. Now, HSC comes along. The med school, they've been here 30 years. They wanted their own campus. They wanted and they were part of the system, not the university. So they wanted their own campus and look good, and they really wanted the 150 acres over here across the street where the chancellor's house is. Perfect place. No, we cannot do it. No. So Nancy and I get together, and I fortunately was good friends with her. She was one of my mentors. I said, Nancy, let us put it together for you. So we do. I put 200 acres together, right next to Traditions, and I said, she said, how am I going to work with the university? I said, I'd tell her the story of what we did at Food Safety Inspection School. She said, okay. Now here's what we're going to do. 50 acres has to be public-private, so we can get an ROI out of it for the city, taxes and so forth. But it also gives you assets in your foundation that you can generate funds with. And I promise you, if we can do anything like the food safety, that'd be worth $50 million in 25 years. I sold her. That's what we did. Guess what we have on that 50 acres today? We built the whole thing out, by the way. 544,000 square feet of facilities. We have the Caliber, which is the pharmaceutical manufacturer's H1N1 vaccine. Pays $250,000 a year, leased back to the med school. And then the third building out there is owned privately, built privately with money, their own money, and it pays $50,000. So all of a sudden, in 3 years, I have $300,000 coming back to the med school. So that success, again, success breeds success, but adversity also caused me, or the negative, caused me to find a positive side to it, okay? And it worked. Now, the best part about all that is what can be the next economic vehicle for Texas A&M? Pharmaceutical world. We have a chance. Every pharmaceutical company in the country has been here. We have a chance to develop a pharmaceutical empire here because look what's happening in New Jersey. They want to get out. California the same way. But what made it happen? We have the capability here. Normally you grow the viruses in fertile chicken eggs. Did y'all know that? You know what that means? You got to have a rooster and a hen to lay a fertile egg, okay? Then you put that egg into an environment that you grow the virus in. Well, that's a 50-50 ratio, okay? Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. Now they've developed the same process with tobacco plants. You can take a tobacco plant, grow the virus in it, harvest it at maturity, take the vaccine out. I mean, you make the vaccine from it. Saves millions. Then the other thing, what is the expensive part of a building? You know, everybody knows what a clean room is, you know, where it's perfectly clean. They found a way to bypass that. Still build a building, but then find 20 by 40 little incubators, and it's not really an incubator, just a facility, that has all the clean room activity. And it's all redundant with computers, air conditioning, everything. So that saves the cost of a huge building that now can be captured in the profit line. So this is what we're going to have here in the next few years. And Bland is doubling their, the engineering school is doubling their size in engineers. Bland is going to help us find a way to put a workforce deal together. So we have, all of a sudden, we got an economic base here that you guys are going to be able to feed off of, okay? So that's the end of my story. And just remember this, success breeds success. And every time you have a negative thing in your life, pray about it, because you may make it into a positive, and you'll really be happy. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.